Alright, so this is going to begin a series of tutorials which focus on rendering and bookmaking. Some of them will be essential, and I'll try and get the sort of the easiest methods out first, so that if you don't have a ton of time to spend on this stuff or you just really don't like it, then it's totally fine. We can get some really nice looking images with just a few simple views. So what I'm going to focus on first is the creation of a section perspective. And I'm not going to go into the rendering of the section perspective, but I am going to go into trying to find a good view, and then basically showing you where you should maybe add some elements on the interior of your building, and get some lighting, like a good lighting into the building. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm in a ground view here. And I'm going to go to a view, or my view tab, and create a section. Now you might already have a section, and you have to spend a little bit of time. You might want to do this this series of steps a couple of times to find a good view of your building. For instance, I have a lobby up here. I may want to choose a view that looks, into the lobby, and that's my main sort of view. But I have a structural wall here, so that might obscure it a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is create a view here, and I'm going to go actually to both sides of the lot. So I need to pull the view, the section that I just created. I need to modify it, but keep in mind when you pull the header or the tail, it's not necessarily going to modify the scope box, so you have to bring that out to where it needs to be. Once we have that view in place, we can actually right click the view and we can go to it. And here, if you maybe change this to a shaded mode, and you turn your shadows on, you could start to see what the view will look like. Now this is an orthographic projection, keep in mind, but it gives you a good sense of what will be in the view. Like I'll see basically the entire lobby with the sort of elevated floor and this atrium here, and I will see most of the interior of this space. You can also get a sense for what you might need to add. So I have elevators here, and it might look a little bit strange if there's no walls covering that. So if you have a little bit of extra time, you'll probably want to add those walls. I also didn't necessarily finish some of this stuff, like bringing the structure to the roof. So you'll probably have to add those elements. Now it's not completely necessary, but it will make it a lot more realistic in the end. And really we're just trying to get one view, so you only have to basically take care of the elements that are in this view. And you can do that by placing walls on the ground floor. So let's right click this, let's create similar, and finish face interior. Let's just create a wall like this. Actually this should be different. Like generic 8-inch. Now if I go back to my section, you can see that that wall needs to be changed. Whoops. Let's have it go up to the roof level and start at the ground. Right, so I just needed to add that wall there. It doesn't even have to go much to the end of my actual building. It just needs to show up from this section line on. And this will apply to things like entourage as well. So when you're adding people, or you're adding, I don't know, maybe ducts or something, like you have to add a single duct because it's not appearing, or you might need to make a displacement set so it looks better in the view. You really only have to do this stuff on this side. You don't have to do anything over here. So I'm going to create a default 3D view, and if you already have a default 3D view, you might want to duplicate that and rename it, and then create a new default 3D view. And this might seem a little wonky. I think I have my sight turned off here, but I'm going to hide anything that is super far out here. So I'm going to hide and view this element, go to VV, make sure my sight is off. And I think I just unloaded that imported family too, so whatever works for you. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually in this 3D view, I'm going to right click on the view cube, and I'm going to go to Orient to View, Sections, and the view that I just created. So this is section 5, and you might want to rename that section so you know exactly what your looking at. And this is, if we change this to a shaded mode and we turn the shadows on, you can see that this is exactly the same view. It has different visibility graphics. I mean, you can see that this is scaled correctly. But we can actually go in our properties mode for this 3D view and change this to a perspectival projection. And now you get a section perspective. And here you can see that that wall is more important, right? So we can see it more easily. You might want to add a few more walls. You can see I'm missing a floor here, and that's going to show up. But that's essentially the main step. Now this might show up a little bit strangely for you, depending on whether you have your scope boxes on or not. So there's a couple ways you can focus on this. If you end up really far away, just go ahead and zoom in, and if it's really flat or if it's really sort of too distorted, you can always go to your navigation wheel, and there's a drop down here, and under that drop down you can increase or decrease the focal length. And if I move in and then zoom out, you can see that that is much flatter of a view. And I could do the opposite as well, so I can go to increase, decrease focal length, and I can zoom out. And essentially, the camera now is where my perspective is looking from, right? So if you're looking at an object that's really far away, it will probably be more distorted than it will be if you're right up next to it, or vice versa. I'm not exactly sure how the optics work, but you might want to spend a few minutes increasing or decreasing the focal length until you can see all of your elements and they're not too distorted. If they're too distorted, it gets a little bit hard to read. It's a little bit cartoony. But here this looks like it would be about a 50 millimeter focal length, like I'm a person standing right here looking at this building, right? That's what we're trying to do. So that is the first option. You have another option, which I'm going to rename this view, and I'm going to call this section perspective 2, and I can go into a default 3D view, and I can make sure my scope box is visible, or sorry, my section box. So let's turn this on. Section box on, and there you can see some weird stuff is happening, but I can bring it back down. Then I can go into a top view, and keep in mind this is still an orthographic projection by default, and I can pull it into where I think the interior will need to be cut. So there again, if we turn the shading on, you can see that this wall is still here, so it's not being cut enough. So you might want to do this in an ISO or something. Pull it in a little bit. That's maybe too much. Probably want to see that column. But then I have a curved wall here, so I'd probably want to cut that column out actually. Let's bring it forward. And there we go. So we can go and click the left on the view cube here. And again, this is still orthographic. So if we go ahead and change this to a perspectival view, it will give us the view that we need. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to change your lighting and your shadows so that you get a nice amount of light coming into the building.